here is a map of Asheville, and within the city you can find three important castles. There is the Biltmore Estate, certainly the most known. There is Overlook Castle, situated along Town Mountain and Vance Gap roads. And there is Zealandia, the castle that is located over there somewhere. Now, this road here, Vance Gap Road, is the road on which holds the address of Zealandia. This here is a zoomed-out map of the Overlook Castle vicinity, with that castle circled there to the left. Now, look to the right of that. There you will find Vance Gap Road. Now, let's zoom this area out even more. There, down at the bottom, you will notice that Vance Gap Road seems to end. Let's now move down slightly south to where it seems to meet Tunnel Road. There, as shown circled here, Vance Gap Road, it starts again. That, folks, lies high above this tunnel here. Well, the one below my feet as I am standing on top of it. You know, though, once upon a time, long ago, it appears likely that Vance Gap Road ran from one castle to the other. Then they built this highway here, Highway 240. That ruined all the fun that was once had. In fact, that will be further discussed, albeit very briefly, a bit later. Yes, the castle of Zealandia. That will be the focus of this episode of Let's Explore This. Now, the castle, it is on private property. As such, I doubt I will be able to get even close to the property. In fact, this is about the only view I can provide without stepping far onto the property. Still, it does appear at least one YouTube exploration crew, EJC Exploration, did manage to get inside. I doubt I will be that lucky, but who knows? Regardless of whether I do or not, that video and a number of photos do abound. Much of this episode may end up revolving around those. Overall, though, the castle, it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, rendering it worthy of its own episode, and it was listed in 1977, which denotes how old this document is, the document from which most of this information for this episode will be culled. This here, near what is today the only entrance to the castle, is Helen's Bridge. It is a stone-arched bridge that is the stuff of local legend and lore. The document does mention it, but does not go into it heavily, due to its fascination with supposedly paranormal activity. A discussion of it will be presented here a bit later in the episode. One or two further sources at that point will be used. Furthermore, as stated earlier, this document does date back to 1977. That is at a time, either before or just about when Highway 240 was constructed. Bowcatcher Mountain and its surrounding topography was heavily altered. Therefore, an extra source or two will be used in a discussion of what happened during that era. With all that said, let's get these wheels rolling. Since 1889, Zealandia has occupied its present site here on Bowcatcher Mountain, overlooking the city of Asheville and the surrounding mountains. John Evans Brown, a grandson of one of the first explorers of western North Carolina, built the castellated structure. In 1849, Brown left Asheville in the gold rush. He kept a diary of his journey, which vividly described the hardships and deaths that accompanied the trip to California. Like many others who had gone west in search of a fortune, Brown was disappointed. In the mid-1850s, he continued west, finally settling in New Zealand. There, he married first, the daughter of a prosperous sheep raiser named Peacock, and became a very prominent citizen. He served as a member of the colonial parliament and named his district Swannanoa after this river here in Asheville. Later, in 1888, John had returned to North Carolina. Then, a year later, he had this home, well, a small portion of it, built here on Bowcatcher Mountain. He named his castle Zealandia after his adopted country. In 1895, John Brown, he would die at the age of 68. Caroline E. Revell and her husband Oliver, a real estate speculator, were the next owners. Then, in 1904, they would sell the property to Philip S. Henry. Henry, he was a native of Adelaide in Australia and was educated in Europe. His first wife, Florine Lewison of New York, died tragically in a fire in 1903. The next year, he brought his two small daughters here to Asheville, which was at that time an elegant resort community. Henry, he would take an influential place in the community as an intellectual, an art patron, and a diplomat. He was the special representative for the state of North Carolina at the Ibero-American Exposition held in Spain in 1929. He was appointed honorary and special commissioner for the state on various diplomatic and fact-finding missions. His memberships included the Académie Diplomatique Internationale, Paris, and the International Institute of Intellectual Cooperation, a subdivision of the League of Nations. Here, he was the president of the Asheville Art Association and gave Asheville its first art museum. Henry immediately started making additions and improvements to his estate. In 1908, he led contracts for a $50,000 addition. The existing house that Brown owned, it consisted of 32 small rooms. He would then add another 30. Work on the house would continue through 1920. However, all of that was suspended in 1914. That was the year when Henry would return to England to offer his services during the war. During that time, Zealandia, it became a refuge for evacuated English children. The original Brown Castle, it was of pebble dash stucco over brick, but the addition, it was done in blue granite, quarried reportedly from the side of Bowcatcher Mountain. This here is from a postcard, said to date from before 1908. For an old postcard, the photo does look quite impressive for a sketch. So, is this the one in question? Not sure, but a 1908 postcard is said to show an artist's sketch of the then new house. The whole house is pictured in the crenellated style of the old portion. The major elements of the addition are correct, but chimneys, windows, and dormers are different. Okay, so I don't see dormers here, but it is said that the artist probably speculated on the final appearance of the unfinished house, which was a Tudor structure by 1920. A large stable was also built on the property at this time. Yes, Philip, he was a great horseman, and his grand stable, also built in the Tudor style, does or did reflect a great pride for his horses. I think now would be as good a time as any to provide an in-depth architectural survey of the castle. So, yes, Zealandia, it is an early 20th century adaptation of the Tudor style. Both the exterior and interior display a finesse of historical detail and a high quality of materials and workmanship. The house is a blend of English rural Gothic styles that include elements of both Elizabethan and Tudor. Many features of the Tudor Gothic style, which were prevalent in England from about 1509 to 1603, were adopted in the design of Zealandia. The three-story porte-cochere is a modification of the Elizabethan frontispiece, often a two-story entrance porch. Boldly projecting masses, steep gables, and massive chimneys do give the building its character. Large window spaces with leaded diamond panes are typical Elizabethan features. Low-rising Tudor arches, yes, those can be found in the fenestration and entries. The house rises 3 stories above a basement which is carved out of the solid granite of Bowcatcher Mountain. You know, the mountain this tunnel runs through. It is laid out in a general cross plan, or a T, with the main facade as the arms of the cross, the porte-cochere as the tip, and the back wing as the stem. The exterior walls, they are laid in a random ashlar of blue granite, quarried on the site, the half-story under the eaves and under the prominent gables. That is plastered in a half-timber technique. The most decorative of these is the steep gable of the porte-cochere. The front facade, it consists of 3 major bays. The left bay is divided by 5 window spaces on the first and second story. The first floor windows are topped by low-rising Tudor arches, and the second story windows terminate in the low-bracketed eaves. 3 gabled dormers do project from the steep roof and are decorated with dentils and brackets. The middle bay, it is formed by the 3-story projecting porte-cochere. Then there is the right bay. It is dominated by an enormous 2-story window, and a single dormer does emerge from the roof. The demarcation of these 3 bays is emphasized by their 3 separate roof lines. On the east side of the front facade, there is a 2-story porch wing. The first floor, it was an open loggia with 1 arched opening on the main facade, shown here, and 3 on the side. It has since been glassed in. Above, you can find an enclosed sunroom topped by a flat roof that extends from the eave line of the main house. This appears to be the only good view of the rear I can find, but the rear of the house, it is divided into 3 blocks, much like the front. The east wing is almost identical on the back and on the front, with the exception of the back having one less set of windows. It also holds both a shed dormer and a gabled dormer on the roof. The center block forms the stem of the cross plan and tells the most about the changes made over the years. The east wall of the wing is basically a continuation of the connecting wall, with plastering between the windows under the eaves. However, the first floor holds a single arched window. The south wall, one I barely have a photo of, is divided vertically with half stone and half stucco. The portion which is completely plastered, though barely visible from this angle, was formerly an interior wall that connected the house built for John Evans Brown and part of the 1908 stone addition. The group of freestanding stone arches, again not visible here, which connects with the crenellated stone wall, were part of an earlier enclosed loggia. An additional 34 rooms once stood on the flat grassy area behind the house. I guess within or near the circled area at the bottom there. Sorry, no good photo, but the west wall of the rear block has likely been glassed in, but is said to have been previously open on both floors. The window treatment there, on the opposite side of what is shown here, is very different from the rest of the house. Those windows are not of what is shown here, having wooden mullions instead of lead and not holding a diamond pane design. On the first floor, there are said to exist 2 large arched windows. The architect, Anthony Lord, who did the 1950s alterations to the house, has remembered making this hallway into a kitchen. Oh wow, food! Could this be in that kitchen? Still referring to the west wall of the rear wing, the second floor is said to hold a single stone pilaster dividing 2 large glass spaces. Sorry, no photo, but on the interior it is said to be an awkward and narrow space with stone as the wall finish. This supports the theory that this area was once open to the weather. Yes, I have lots of interior shots, but none showing such an awkward and narrow space. The west wing of the cross, the side I have no photo of, projects only slightly past the connecting wall, barely making a T-shape. It encloses the staircase of the grand entrance hall and has 1 arched window on the second-story level. The gable is said to be decorated in half-timbering and contains 3 connecting windows. Moving now to the interior of Zealandia, it does reflect a knowledgeable handling of Tudor details. Yes, the S and W you see here are not Tudor specific, just the first initials of Sarah and Will, a couple who was married here around 2018. So, entering through the porte-cochere, you will find the large 2-story main entrance hall, suggestive of the major hall of the Tudor home. A large limestone fireplace here does face the entrance doors on the opposite wall. The opening is a Tudor arch that holds stylized pilasters at each end. That, I believe, refers to the interior side of the door, for which I have only this photo of. At least, I think it is of the very door shown here. The entablature over the pilasters forms the mantel shelf, projecting over each pilaster and in the middle. The vines shown here are from that wedding venue, but it is said that a small leaf and flower decoration is centered under the center entablature block. You know, the entablature found around the entrance door. Here we have more of these wedding venue vines, as well as here and here. Then, here, also taken at that wedding venue, we have some wine. Wow, it must have been a large wedding. More importantly, though, here we can see the oak wainscot reaching to the top of the door openings at about 8 foot. Within that are slightly raised rectangular panels, all framed by stiles and rails. The grand staircase, it doglegs over 360 degrees on all sides of the room. The balusters have a cap and a base and are topped by a triglyph-like design. The balusters are joined by repeating arches with keystones. Furthermore, those balusters, they are decorated with spindles and strapwork cutouts. The ceiling reflects the feeling of Old English timber framing. It has a ribbed barrel vault. The rafters are crossed by 2 purlins, and a wall plate runs on each wall. It all makes a type of gridiron in which the spaces between the beams are filled with plaster. The rafters form brackets where they join the wall. All the window and door openings are topped with a Tudor arch. Furthermore, the windows, they are filled with leaded diamond panes. Here you can see more of those wedding venue flowers, likely sitting atop a mantel with one of those leaded diamond pane windows there in the background. Adjoining the entrance hall, on the left as you enter, is the old library, which was later the living room when the house was reduced in size. The elaborate limestone fireplace is the focal point of the room, axially placed opposite the entrance. The chimney piece shows new Renaissance motifs, while the rest of the room shows more medieval elements. Once again, this fireplace is organized around an architectural order. On each side of the opening is a pedestal that tapers toward the base, and each pedestal is topped with an Ionic capital that holds volutes, and each pedestal is further decorated with swags and patera. I guess that there is a patera, some kind of bowl-shaped thingy. The entablature above forms the mantel shelf and projects over each column. It holds a center block that contains a grotesque. Yes, grotesque, that is what they are calling it, but the rest of the frieze is decorated in a swirling foliated design. Above the rectangular marble-faced opening is a Tudor arch framed by moldings and foliated ornament. The oak paneling in the living room is the same as that in the hall. In this room, however, it exists only on the fireplace wall. The French doors on either side of the fireplace are set in stone, though likely a bit hard to tell from this photo. The rest of the walls, however, they are finished in plaster. The most decorative feature of the room, however, is the balcony that runs on all four sides of the room. The balusters are the same as those of the staircase. 4 freestanding support columns do support the balcony. These oak columns are decorated in a strapwork design. The capitals. They are a simple series of moldings with a neck or an astragal of dentils. The 4 arched windows on each side wall are deeply set in an oak surround and hold diamond panes. Through those leaded French doors on the fireplace wall is the glassed-in sun porch. Sorry, no photo, but reportedly a hooded fireplace formed out of a composite stone has been added. I guess this could be called hooded, though it appears to be the one in the main entrance hall. Anyhow, behind the entrance hall is the dining room, I guess, through those doors right there. This room, the dining room, it holds more intimate proportions than the other 2 rooms on the main floor. The paneling here is dark and finished to resemble mahogany. Fluted pilasters do flank the fireplace opening, and above that opening is a large horizontal panel with 2 smaller rectangular panels laid vertically on each side. The entablature of the columns does run around the entire room and forms the terminating height of the paneling. From floor to entablature, the pattern consists of a long vertical rectangle, followed by a small square panel and topped with another tall rectangle. Okay, so I guess that could work. That's not how I would have described it. Oh, wait, maybe. That kind of does fit the way it looks to the far right there beside the fireplace. Yeah, vertical, square panel, horizontal, but is that true around the entire room? Anyhow, in the frieze above the entablature, that right there, is a painted pastoral scene in a medieval style. In the 1930 sales catalog of the house, which I have no photo of, it is reported to be described as being by a famous American artist in the style of Benozzo Gazzoli. Gazzoli was a 15th century Italian painter. It is his fresco, The Arrival of the Three Kings, in the Palazzo Riccardi in Florence that is likely the basis of this statement. The treatment of the noblemen on horseback and the flora and fauna of the landscape is very similar. Moving now to the ceiling, which I have very little in the way of photos, it is done in an especially fine plasterwork design. 5 beams do separate the ceiling into 4 large panels, and each panel is an elaborate strapwork design on which are delicately painted flowers and foliage. Okay, folks, so it appears the kitchen is a room I have no photo of. No, wait, what is that there? Like, right in there. Is that a sink and an oven? Though, the kitchen, it is said to be off the dining room. Previously an open loggia, the long narrow space was converted to a kitchen in the 1950s when the alterations were made to the house. Not this photo, but the following photos were taken at a time when an art gallery was present. The pics certainly do not appear to resemble what has just been discussed. The question then is, are they of the one or more of the upper floor rooms? Not sure, but if not, I have no photos of the upper rooms. Whether they are or not, these photos will simply have to do for the next bit to be explored. So, on the upper 2 floors, there are 12 bedrooms and 4 baths. The detailing of these rooms is simple and straightforward. Many of the rooms continue the English mode, with diamond-paned windows and walls divided with timber framing and filled in with plaster. Okay, then where's the timber framing? Yeah, I don't see any. At least none in these photos. Anyhow, except for one Greek Revival form mantle on the 3rd floor, all removable mantles have been taken by vandals. Okay, so zooming in, we have this stone fireplace here. It does not look Greek Revival, though it is the only photo I have of what I believe to be an upper-level fireplace. Any visitor to Zealandia from downtown Asheville, he will first ride under this stone bridge, which was once used as the entrance to the estate. First? Well, the first thing I see before even hitting the bridge is this road here, Windswept Drive. That's fine. On the other side of the road, however, is this. What is this? Could this be the remnants of some long-forgotten road? Is it some kind of hiking trail? Why is it gated? What lies down that dirt road? I wish I had the time to trek a bit, but I don't. Before going into what that visitor sees next after passing under the bridge, we do need to talk more about this bridge, these days often referred to as Helen's Bridge. A beautiful bridge it might be, but be warned, it is not a bridge you want to be fooling around with. Originally built in 1909 as a stagecoach bridge for the mountaintop castle of Zealandia, it today sits largely abandoned and overgrown. Its presence is an uncanny remnant from an era when North Carolina's wealthy families lived in mountaintop castles. But here's the thing about this bridge. Sometimes I have to take risks to document sites. It's part of the game, so to speak. Anyone who travels up here is taking a risk. You see, reportedly, once upon a time, there was this young woman who worked at Zealandia. Her name was Helen. One tragic night, she was working in the kitchen when a fire suddenly sparked up in the large castle. Helen knew her daughter was down the hill reading in the library. Down the hill, reading in the library. This room was once the library, yet there was one down the hill? Not sure, but reportedly, Helen rushed through the castle trying to reach her beloved child. But that fire, it had already engulfed all those paper books. Struck with grief, Helen rushed to this here tall stagecoach bridge and leapt to her death. Today, even now in 2024, anyone who dares to drive under Helen's Bridge at night claims to have strange experiences. Luckily for me, as you can see, it is daytime. Some say they can see Helen's spirit hanging from the bridge. Others claim a haunted woman will wave them down and ask if they have seen her daughter. Yet others claim their car suddenly shuts off under the bridge. Well, I sure hope I don't start having electrical troubles with my car. You see, I have this new car, as you probably can tell. It is a hybrid. So, what does that mean? Well, it means it runs heavily on batteries. To think that I drove it under this bridge, which some reportedly claim causes electrical issues to occur with cars, like batteries draining, stalling, problems starting, things like that. Given a hybrid does operate heavily on batteries, certainly, with it being a new car, I certainly don't want to be having any troubles. Still, the bridge has become a popular spot for locals to visit at night, hoping for a spooky thrill. But be warned, the top of the bridge is off limits, and the space under the bridge, it is a winding road with vehicles. And now, back to what the visitor on his way to Zealandia will see. So, after riding under the stone bridge, he will then approach the carriage house, which sits split level on the east side of Bowcatcher Mountain. Carriage house. I believe that is referring to this building here, the stables building. The thing is, can it be seen from the road? Will I be able to spot it without stepping onto the property? Well, I certainly have to apply a photo for the carriage house. It's possible there may have been another entrance at one time, not sure, but here I am at the entrance as it exists today. Yes, this is it, folks. This is it. Now, yes, the gate is wide open. I could technically go through there, but it does say private property and no trespassing, so we will not be going through there. That carriage house might be over there somewhere. If it is not visible from this vantage point. So, the front facade is said to face west up the mountain to the home and consists of one major gable flanked by hexagonal turrets. 3 massive stone columns in the random ashlar pattern do support this gable, which forms an entrance portico, the middle level of the 3-story building. That gable, folks, is what I call a stable gable. Now, if the facade faces west, then south must be to the right. This, then, must be the south elevation. That's important because 15-foot arched doors can be found there, I guess right in that arch there, that provide an entrance to the lower level. Sorry, this is the only photo of the south elevation I have. The lower level, it is of stone and forms a visual base for the half-timber construction above. I guess this here is the uppermost third of the gable. The details in there are a bit hard to make out, but pigeonholes are said to add character to the uppermost third of the south gable, while a stone chimney emerges from the base and rises to the left side of the ridge. The north facade, which I do not have a photo of, is similar to the south, but is not a main entrance. One door is centered as an entrance to the lower level. Windows with diamond grills can be found centered in a row on the middle level. There is a window in the roof gable on this end as well. No mention of windows on the south facade, but are mentioned for the north. Strange, though I am pretty sure this is the south elevation. No photo of the east facade either, but I do have this, an early blueprint of the east side. It will have to do. So, the east side, or the east face, it rises from a sub-basement and a basement, both built of stone. It continues the half-timber construction across the middle level, and the third level, it is characterized by the 6 dormers in the timber-framed roof. Yeah, I know. Only one dormer is shown here. Sorry, no interior photos, but heavy oak timber construction is used on the floors and roof of the carriage house, and adds a feeling of strength to the interior. The upper level is open and is accented at intervals with tie beams and diagonal bracing. The middle level is divided into 2 grooming rooms and a servant's quarters. I'm assuming the middle level to be the second floor, though not sure. Elaborate oak stalls do accent the north room, likely down in that far end, and are trimmed in spindles which form an undulating rail across the top. The lower level is divided with stalls, and inside the stone walls are said to be exposed. Arches of stone add to the feeling of base achieved at this level. Arches of stone. Here, are they talking interior, or are they talking exterior? Not entirely sure, but north of the carriage house are said to be handsome but heavy wrought iron gates to the estate. The gates are said to be hinged on columns formed by stone laid in that random ashlar pattern. Okay, so the gates to the estate. I wonder if we could find those somewhere along this road. Yes, I know. You do see a gate here, but it is not the wrought iron gate they're talking about. Yes. There's got to be another entrance. Okay. With the architectural description now complete, we can move on to 1928. During that year, Zealandia was offered as a summer White House to President and Mrs. Coolidge. There is no record whether they accepted. However, Philip Henry's public spirit did not end there. From 1924 to 1930, he opened his private art collection to the public. The artworks were on display at Zealandia with invitation by card or by appointment. In time, this proved to be unsuitable, and so Philip Henry built a separate museum on his estate. Okay, so maybe these rooms are not in the main house after all. Could that museum be the library down the hill mentioned when Helen reportedly went looking for her daughter? Not entirely sure, but these artworks are said to have included Remington paintings, armor, weapons, goblets from the Incas, a lamp from Pompeii, costumes, porcelain, and much more. Contemporary accounts are full of praise for the splendor of the museum and its popularity with the public. Thousands were said to have visited the first year, more than 5,000 in the summer of 1931. You know, though, that museum, it is no longer standing. You see, once upon a time, in October of 1976, to be exact, some people had the bright idea of building this here Highway 240. This article here talks about all of that. Was it really a transportation necessity? Who knows, but blasting had begun by the time Zealandia was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1977. The museum was a goner. Overall, though, both Philip Henry and his house on the mountain held an important place in Asheville history. In Look Homeward Angel, author Thomas Wolfe preserves his memory of the Bowcatcher estate and its owner, Philip Roseberry. On his death in 1933, the local papers bemoaned the loss of the city's great benefactor. The estate eventually passed to his 2 daughters, Violet and Lenore McConaughey, who had married brothers in the British Royal Air Force. Yes, it does say son for Lenore, though I think it is supposed to be daughter. Anyhow, the property did remain in the family until 1961. However, in the 1950s, Violet and Hartley McConaughey had decided that the 62-room house was too large, so they tore down the old brown portion of the house and a few rooms of the 1908 addition, leaving the present 28 rooms. The house and its 16 acres were, in 1961, bought by George Dixon and his wife, and are still in the ownership of the Dixons. During the Dixons' residence, Zealandia once again would come to house one of Asheville's finest private art collections. After their children grew up and she lost her husband, Mrs. Dixon sold the bulk of the art collection and moved out of the house. Still, she was anxious to see it come into sympathetic hands. Okay, it is now 2024. Tell me, folks, who do you think might own the house today? Well, not sure. Let's check the deed books. This here is a deed from 1983. In the bottom description there, you will notice the name of Dixon. At this time, however, the property was being transferred from Wayne Kinser to Robert Armstrong. Much later, this property, it was in the hands of Festiva Real Estate Holdings, a subsidiary of Zealandia Holdings, a real estate investment company. Now, you can read more about what Zealandia Holdings is involved in here, as we begin to move on to our next destination, wherever that might be, 'cause, yes, I have to move on.